David P. Demuth is the co-founder and senior managing director of CFO Consulting Partners, where he leads the firm's technology, M&A, private equity, real estate, manufacturing, and healthcare practices. A seasoned CFO with extensive global experience across Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East, David has served in senior financial leadership roles at major companies including Kodak, Polychrome Graphics, Troy Corporation, Continental Grain, National Starch and Chemical, and PepsiCo. At his firm, he specializes in interim CFO work, GAAP and SEC guidance, private equity support, capital raising strategies, and buy and sell side due diligence. David is an active member and board leader in organizations such as FEI, TMA, XPX, and ACG, and was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Princeton Mercer Chamber of Commerce. He holds an MBA in finance and BS in accounting, and is a CPA. Thank you, David, for coming on, man. That's a lot going on there. I don't know if we have enough time.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of things over my career, and that's what I'm doing now. I enjoy the most. I found, for example, when I started out, and I didn't know what did I major in. I was the first person in either other side of my family to go to college, so I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. My father was an aircraft mechanic during World War II. He could do. I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler, so I couldn't do what he was doing. So, I looked at the courses. I went to Loyola in Baltimore. I looked at the courses like business, accounting, and I think it was economics. I said, business is too general, economics is too cerebral. So I picked accounting, and I did that, and I got my degree. But I found that what I really like to do was help people with their tax stuff. So I did audit for a few years, but then I went into the tax side of things with the firm I was with. It was Pete Marwick originally, and then eventually became KPMG. And I loved the tax, because going into a client and telling him what he did wrong as an auditor wasn't much fun. But going in every time to tell him you saved $1 million, that was an easy.
People like to save money.
Easy thing to do. So I picked tax as my starting point, and I became an international tax expert at Pete Marwick or KPMG, and then I was living in Connecticut at the time, so I was recruited by Pepsi International, and so I went over there, and I was not in the corporate tax firm. I was embedded in the international beverage group. My job was to travel around the world and deal with Pepsi's international tax problems, which were colossal. They had 148 subsidiaries all around the place, so I'd be traveling 2 or 3 weeks every month. For example, I'd go to Mexico City, Caracas, Venezuela, Buenos Aires, or maybe Rio de Janeiro before that, and then over one more city, and then back to the office for a few days, and then I hit Europe, 8 cities in Europe, back to the office. It was crazy, and then I would do the 8 cities in Asia. Again, and these trips were 2 or 3 weeks long. You can't just do Asia in a few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big place.
So, and going from Japan to Singapore, the distance is astronomical. It's amazing. And fortunately, back then, since I was flying most of the time more than 4 or 6 hours, the company policy was first class. So back then, I did have the luxury of flying first class. I took my wife with me once a year. She didn't want to go anywhere other than Europe, but when I did take her to Europe, it was for 3 weeks, and she would be, we'd have a lot of fun on the weekends and so forth and so on. And we'd be in Belgium or France, or and I can talk about that all too. We stayed at a hotel in France, and the hotels are very old there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we checked into one, and we went in, and my wife says, "This is fantastic." And then she said, "I can't find the bathroom." And so it was the way that they were set up. There was rooms down the end of the hall. You had to open the door. It was closed because the front door was open. It was hiding there anyway. So I won't bore you with any more of that stuff. The problem, the most prominent area for travel was in the Middle East, Africa. So I did have an opportunity to go to Cairo and see the pyramids. So before, I don't think I'd go there now. It's kind of more dangerous, I think. I did also have it. What I would do is I'd be in Cairo until Friday, and then I'd fly down to Nairobi, and I'd go on a camera safari for the weekend. So I did take advantage of my travel and did some neat things during that time. So when I moved on from Pepsi, because I had a daughter, I had 2 daughters and a wife, and I wasn't seeing my family, so I had to do something different. So someone said, how would you like to be treasurer of a chemical company owned by Unilever? I said, well, that sounds interesting, but I'm a tax guy. He said, well, because of your international experience, you know more than most treasurers, but you also have the tax background, so we think you should consider it. Well, so I did that. I came home to my wife in Connecticut and said, I had this great opportunity in New Jersey. She said, New Jersey? I'm not going there. So
I'm not going.
I'm not going. So what I did, I said, well, I did my homework, and I said, well, I looked at Princeton, and Princeton looks like Connecticut. So we traveled down to Princeton on Palmer Square the weekend after Christmas, and my daughters at that point were 5 years old and nine years old and so forth, a long time ago. And they liked it. So they had been in private school already, so we put them into private schools, Princeton Day School, and everybody was happy. And it's really a great place to go to live. My older daughter went to the Hunt School for high school, and my younger daughter went to Lawrenceville. And the Lawrenceville situation was interesting in that she started dating this guy in the 10th grade, and 9 years later they got married. So it's very unusual that people from high school get married, but that's the case. So I told my wife, if we had never moved to Princeton, never would have happened.
There you go. That's true.
So that's sort of that situation. So when I was at National Starch and Chemical, it was owned by Unilever, which was weird. But anyway, we did $1 billion worth of acquisitions back in the late '80s, early '90s. And being treasurer, I was a key person in that business. So I did that. Was having a lot of fun. But the Pepsi network was always very active. So what happened is a lawyer used to work with it. Pepsi's he's now the general counsel at Continental Grain Company, a huge commodity trading company in New York City. He calls me up and says, the CFO for the financial services group is left. Would you be interested? I said, well, I'm not a financial services guy. He said, well, come in and talk to my boss. Anyway, 6 weeks later, I'm the CFO for the financial services group for Continental Grain Company, doing a lot of different things. We got rid of what wasn't working, but one thing was really interesting. Solomon Brothers, the old investment bank, figured out how to take whole loan mortgages and securitize them, first mortgages. But no one was paying the second mortgages, so that's what we did. We did $15 billion worth of second mortgage securitizations and made a lot of money. I did that for about 6 years, but then I always loved the chemical business, and I met this owner up in Florham Park who had a small chemical company, and he only had one plant in Newark, and he wanted to expand internationally, especially Asia. I said, I can help you. So I helped him with my international experience, helped him build a plant 3 hours north of Bangkok in Thailand. So that was an interesting environment that helped him. So I did that for about 3 years, and then again, the Pepsi network called again, and I was now another guy I know. He was now the HR director when I was fired at Pepsi. He was now the HR director at another company called Kodak Polychrome Graphics, a joint venture between Eastman Kodak and Sun Chemical, selling $2 billion worth of consumables to commercial printers around the world. He said, you have to come up and help us. Joint ventures are difficult. The CEO is a marketing guy, and the CFO is a controller from Sun Chemical. And we really need your background and expertise to help us. You're not going to relocate. We know that, but it was up in Norwalk, Connecticut, so it was back 100 miles from my house. So I said, I'll come up and help you a little bit. So I did. I went up there. Never get the whole story. I got up there. It was a disaster. The place was, it was anyway. They made me eventually the co-CFO. So I was there 2 years working with that situation, helping them with that. Then I finally said, I'm tired of making money for everybody else, so I decided to move on and form my own company, do consulting by myself. I did it for 2 or 3 years, and then what happened is I said, this is great, but I can have more clients if I have partners and other people. So my first partner, Alan Tepper, my partner who lives in Manhattan, we got together in 2006 and formed this current company called CFO Consulting Partners, and we were doing very well. It was in 2006. And 2007, and then 2008 hit, and we had the financial crisis, and we were having difficulty. All of our companies were having difficulty. So I said to Al, we have to get into businesses that are regulated. So we met Eric Siegel, our third partner, and Eric had spent 20 years in American Express Bank. So Eric helped us develop which is our largest vertical right now. We work with the community banks, and he and his team work with they do a lot of the public reporting and so forth for all the various community banks and so forth. So that's been a really good. So we have a really good team, and then we've grown that team to about 25 or more people in addition to 3 partners, and we do a lot of different things, service a lot of different verticals, and I can talk more about that in the next segment, I guess. But I really have had a number of interesting opportunities over the course of my career, and this has been the most fun because I've been doing this the longest of anything. If you notice my career, I've only 6 or 7 years in any one place, I think I got to the point where I did everything I could do, and I needed to move on. So that was my modus operandi at that point in time. But with this practice, everything, there's always something new every week. There's new challenges, there's new clients, and so forth and so on. So it's a pretty interesting environment, I'll be doing it as long as I can do it. So it's we bring in a lot of different. I meet a lot of different people, whether it's manufacturing, business services, real estate, whatever, so forth.
All right. Well, yeah, Dave, that's a lot of information. So we're definitely going to boil this down, and we're going to start. I think in the next segment we'll talk a little bit about some of the lessons you learned throughout and how you ended up starting your own business. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. All right, welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. Okay, David, so you have a very long and diverse career, many different companies, and it sounds like each time you, one thing I noticed in your resume there that we went through is that each time you weren't necessarily like a direct fit, but you had a skill set that the company saw in you that said, hey, you can do this because of your background and your knowledge. And so what did you think about that process where they said, hey, you have this background in tax, but you can be a treasurer. You have this background. This makes you a good person to do this. Because a lot of these jobs are very fluid, right? It's not like you just do one thing every day. It's not like you're on an assembly line. You have to have kind of a wide experience level to do many of these higher level jobs. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I think you have to have the ability to take a challenge, which I was always up to. I think that's what's part of it. And I wasn't afraid of doing something, that maybe I had a mistake or whatever, because I think my brother, my wife's brother, was always very smart. He told me that people that make mistakes are smarter than people that don't make mistakes, because they do a lot of things that other people won't even try. So
that is very true. You learn nothing. As I say, you learn nothing from your success. You learn it all from your failures.
Right.
You learn a lot more from failure, for sure.
So I think that was part of the whole process. I think. I think as far as the company is concerned, the work that I do, it's very interesting because we work with a lot of different companies. We're working with companies that are trying to grow, or working with, and they may be the small companies that are $20 million, $20 million in revenue that really don't have a CFO, and the owner is struggling, and so.
Because you did something very unique, and correct me if I'm wrong, but back when you started this company, fractional executives, fractional CFOs, whatever you want to call them now, that was a relatively new phenomenon, right? That's
correct.
That was kind of like. So tell us a little bit about that and how you decided this was a good idea, and how receptive people were initially to that. Well, maybe that's changed over the years.
There was one or two other companies that. In fact, it's pretty interesting. There was one company named Tatum. They were the first company to do that, Tatum.
Okay.
And I actually called Tatum and gave him my background. And he said, "Well, you're not a good fit for us." So I said, "Okay, thank you." So
you competed.
So about a year later, we formed our own company, and I did it myself, and we probably were competing with Tatum at some point.
Oh my goodness, that's really funny. Actually, that happens a lot, right?
So people tell you can't do something. Fine, I'll show you. We'll show you we can do it. So,
right.
Because what they were doing was not rocket science. It was basically helping companies that did not have a CFO or controller.
Right.
And that's what fractional is all about. It's the outsourced accounting function that was being serviced by, so we were probably the third or fourth company that I'm aware of that started doing that. And now there's probably hundreds or if not more companies doing it. So it's a very competitive environment, but that's okay. We have all senior people, so we usually can do a very good job. Also, we work together as a team. Yeah. So if you hire us and we put one person on the assignment, if that person runs into an issue, they can go back to the other 25 people, and there's one of those 25 or more will have an answer. So it's also, we're not going to walk away. A lot of times you hire a fractional CFO, and he's only there because he lost his job, and he's just there until he finds another one. And so
that's not good.
You're gonna bring that person in, and then they may disappear. So that's not the same with us. We're there until as long as you need us, and we do a great job working ourselves out of a job. We'll get to that a little bit later, but. That's part of the process. Do you have another question?
No. I think it's just interesting. You literally were part of the forefront, the frontier, when this was like the Wild West, so to speak. So, can you tell me a little bit about? Okay, you did that. You found a need. You said, "Oh, these people they can't necessarily afford a full-time CFO, but they need the services, but they don't need me 40 hours a week or whatever, right?
Yeah, we would be there 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever they needed. Sometimes it was more or less depending on the situation. As we grew, we found that there were only so many fractional CFO jobs, so we started to say, wait a minute, we have all this experience, let's start doing other things. So we would be strategic advisors. A company may have a CFO, but the CFO, needed help in terms of a lot of different things. The CFO, most of the small companies, they have the title of CFO, but not really CFOs. A CFO is not only does the accounting and controller work, but is also responsible for the treasury, cash flow, a lot of different risk management, and so forth and so on. And most of the CFOs at the smaller companies all they're doing is the accounting. They're not doing all the rest of the stuff. So that's where we can come in and provide this. So a lot of times, also there are a lot of other things that they're providing. They're just looking at the history of the company. They can tell you what happened in the last 3 years, but they can't tell you what's going to happen in the future because there's no planning going into it at that point in time.
Okay.
So that's one of the things we focus on is let's straighten out your and a lot of times the books and records are messed up. So we try to help them straighten out their books and records so that everything is being recorded properly and you can understand what's going on.
So when does a company typically be aware that this might be a solution? Because a lot of people I know, I think they're more aware now, but they don't think, oh, I need these services, I need to hire somebody to do this. They think like full-time, oh no, we can deal with it. I don't think business owners go right to, hey, let's just do a fractional. I'm not sure it's still well known, right? It's better known.
We're fortunate enough that a lot of our business comes through our referrals. We have good relationships with other accounting firms and
accounting firms. That makes sense.
Accounting firms are interesting. They've started to compete with us. They have their own group to do some of this stuff. What we found if the client if they're the auditor for that client, they cannot do consulting work. So we spend our time talking to audit partners because they are the ones that are going to give us business. So we spend some time with that. So we get business from the accounting firms, mostly from the auditors because they can't do that, or we don't do valuations, for example, and other firms that do valuations. So we have a mix of people that we get business from. We also work with some law firms. There are a lot of lawyers out there that have business. They're very good at doing the legal work, but in a lot of cases, and whatever's going on, they need the finance and accounting work as well.
You bring up an interesting point I want to point out is that, I don't know when the date was, but many years ago, accounting firms were allowed to do a lot more services than they used to be able to do. They used to be very strict as far as what they could do. And what I notice is they almost they have to be careful about diluting their expertise, because if I'm an accountant and a CPA, I might be an expert in international law, I might be an expert in this, but then you start adding on these other things.
Right. Yeah.
None of us can be experts at all of these. So when you start partnering with other people who are kind of staying up on these different aspects of the financial picture, I think you personally get a better result, because it kind of bogs the system down when you have one person trying to do multiple tasks that are very different, just for the idea of like, oh, well, we can do it all here, but that doesn't always.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
And we work with other. The concept of fractional is not just in the finance area. We started to work with fractional HR people.
There you go.
Fractional marketing people. All these people can be. We don't, like we say, we don't know everything. So
nobody does. Yeah,
we have a client, and we can give them the finance and accounting, and we may have known some of the marketing and some of the healthcare HR work because we've done some of that, but we're not the experts, and we're not current. So we work with those. We work with bring those people in as well. So it's sort of a little family type of thing. We belong to a couple of different networking groups. One is called XPX, the Exit Planning Exchange. Mm-hmm. And if you go to an exit planning exchange meeting, you'll see a number of different people there. It'll be accounting and finance like us. There'll be a valuation person, a lawyer, all different types of disciplines, service providers.
Right.
And no one in the room can deliver the total solution to a company looking to exit or sell.
Right.
So we kind of work together to kind of help each other. So it's a fairly interesting environment, and you'll meet. And that's where I've met some of the fractional marketing people as well as the HR people. So
at what point, like as a business owner, when should somebody look into potentially, hey, I think I should probably start talking to outside experts, maybe a fractional, with the idea that maybe if we keep growing, we might need to end up with a full-time personal, right? So I guess the progression is, hey, I have an issue that I'm not really solving well, and I may or may not even be aware yet. Somebody brings it to my attention, like maybe an accountant or somebody, or I realize myself. So what are some things that you commonly see where people say, hey, I probably need some outside help for this. It's time to go talk to somebody else.
Yeah, usually there's a pain point. There's usually one or two.
What
or
are
three.
some common ones? Do you have any common ones?
Some of the pain points that they have. Yeah,
Right.
That's really what triggers them. They have something's going wrong within the company, and that's why they're hiring us to fix it. And there are a lot of different pain points, but a lot of times it's just they may be having difficulty with getting a loan from the bank because they haven't provided the proper information, or it could be it's a manufacturing company that has 300 products. It's family owned. It's the second generation. If you go in and look at they've never done any analysis of what's the gross margin on each product of the 300 products. They look at you like, what do you mean? We've been doing that the way all the time. And I said,
right.
So we do an analysis. We find out the 300 products, only 50 really have a reasonable good gross margin. So that kind of stuff, it's just simple stuff that you look at and try to help people with. It's or if it's a service company, a lot of times the critical thing for a service company is the. Are you stopping or? No, okay. Critical thing for a service company is keeping track of your hours so you can bill the client on a timely basis. So we find a lot of service companies, the biggest challenge they have is collecting the hours for the people that work with the firm, and getting those hours into a situation where you can generate the invoices. And that can be it could take because it's all about cash flow from that point of view. Until you send an invoice out, the client's not going to pay you. So if it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to send an invoice out, and then it takes another 30 days to get paid, that's you're creating a big gap, a lot of working capital that you need. So we try to help people cut all that stuff down by coming up with ways to automatically get their time reports and so forth. And there's a lot more technology now to assimilate that, so that you don't. It's a lot of technology out there now to help you with that process. So I think it's little things like that you can help companies with that are really great.
Well, that's excellent. We're going to take another quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We could just reset the clock each time. That would be helpful. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm doing the math, but I don't want to confuse.
Yeah.
We're going to all be on the same page.
Yeah. That's fine.
I think it's good when you ask questions because it keeps me thinking about other things.
Well, there's a lot we could cover, so obviously we're going to run out of time before we run out of information. That I'm sure of.
Yeah, I remember the last time I did this we kind of went by pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right, here we go. You want to start it up again?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. So I think.
Wait, no. She's got to start. Ready?
I'm going to restart again.
No, what? No, you're good.
Okay.
All right, listen to Master Your Finances. Okay, David, we were talking a little about the pain points and when people might need to really reach out.
Yeah. Some of the other pain points we or some of the examples I can give you is when a company is a private company and somebody gets in their head that they should go public or become public because they're going to do much better if everybody has public stock. Mm-hmm. So we've been in business situations like that. So it's very difficult to go public if you're a small company. It's very costly. So what they usually do is they go public. They find a small public company, and we had a situation where we had a private company that had $70 million in revenue for a private company, and they found a small company in Florida that was in the online education business. It was $1 million public company. Ridiculous, but anyway, that was the situation.
Oh my goodness!
So what we did is we merged with the it's like a reverse merger because the private company was the larger of the two, and so it was a reverse merger. And overnight, everybody in the private company had to figure out to learn what you do when you're a public company, which nobody knew.
Definitely not. Very different from public and private.
So they brought me in to help, with the process, and I was there probably 2 days or more every week helping them, with the filings because no one had to prepare because you had to interact with the external auditors who were doing the public reporting.
Right.
And they wanted a bunch of stuff, so I would give that to them what they needed. And then you had to actually do the SEC filings, the 10Qs, the 10K. 10Qs are the quarterly filings. There's 3 of those a year, and then there's a final report called a 10K, which is your annual report. And they're all fairly comprehensive, long-winded reports that you have to put out. So I would generate all the various information that you needed for that. And it was interesting. I don't know. I'm not being negative, but the CFO, the CEO, all the people in the private company had no idea what to do because they never had an experience with that. So I had
Well, why would they know if there's nothing you have to do?
So I had to do all the work and get them in and get them comfortable with it because we had to follow every quarter or once a year the reports, and so I was doing all that. They did bring in another outside attorney, which was helpful because a lot of that work requires not just finance, but it was also legal. So we would sit. I would sit. We both have an office, and I would sit next to him in my office, and we'd spend 2 or 3 days every week just comparing notes and trying to figure out how to get things done. And we went over. That lasted for about a 2 or 3 year period and so forth until the company was sold. But that's an example. The other examples are that they're SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, and they're even more where they are actually public companies. And what they do is they make an investment in a private company, and then what they do is they de-SPAC. In other words, they go back to a private. The problem is the people that form the public company, they're all about public reporting. But when they de-SPAC and there's only a private company around, the people that are running the company again have the same problem. They're all private company people that don't really have a knowledge or background. So and I don't understand why those companies go public. They're $20 million companies, $40 million companies. But I'm not going to argue with them. They're public and they need help. So we try to help them. But
sure.
But it's not really ideal because what happens is with smaller companies like that, you spend so much time with the public reporting.
Yeah, overhead must be high compared to the revenue.
It's not just that. The business owners lose track of their business because they're spending too much time focused on the public stuff, and they're not paying attention to what's happening with their own business. So
well, they're literally answerable to the public.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why we have all these regulations.
And I was just on a phone yesterday with a potential client or not, that they're talking about. Well, we have, and people are crazy. They were saying, well, we have a company that has a lot of losses. We're just going to take the losses and put them off to the side. I said, you can't do that. It's a public company.
Put them off to the side.
So people get these.
Was there a company that a while ago? Didn't Enron kind of like start?
So you can't do that. You can't do that kind of stuff. So, but what I try to do with these smaller companies is get them set up in the right way so that they can be organized. So when I look at their financial reporting, you have to get that timely so that so maybe in the first 5 or week or 8 days of each month, you've closed your books. You know where you stand. You know where the cash came from. You know where all the various things so that you feel comfortable with that everything's fine. So now you've got your historical information correct. You need to start looking at the future. I mean, I always say the old Yogi Berra joke, which is you get to the fork in the road, take it.
Right.
What does that mean? And he had a lot of great expressions.
Sure.
So you have to be able to look at your company and say what's going to happen for the next 3 to 5 years. So what I try to get people to do first with the budget and with the forecast is say let's do a budget for 1 year, first year, and get comfortable with all the various ins and outs, and let's figure out how we're going to generate that revenue. Let's go into details, so forth, and so we have the revenue line, we have the expenses, and once we do that, let's go from 1 year to 3 to 5 years to put together a strategic plan, and maybe the first year is the budget. So it's getting people thinking about what to do, how are we going to go forward, what kind of business am I going to generate, how am I going to do it, who are the people. And people are a big part of it too. It's not just numbers. You have to look at all the human resource. It's people is also a big product too. I mean, you can have the greatest company in the world, but if they don't have the right people, it's not going to work. So it's a combination of things. You have to make sure all the pieces of the puzzle are working properly. So, but once you start, you have to start the forecasting, cash flow forecasting. It's interesting when you're talking to some of the business owners. Well, I really don't know how to. I don't know how to figure that out. Well, you have to start somewhere. So let's take the next 13 weeks and try to figure out what cash is going to come in, what cash is going to go out. Let's put together a schedule. So after a few months, even though they don't like it, they say, yeah, we actually can do that. And so once we get to do 90 days, let's go out a little bit longer. So the goal is to eventually get out maybe even 6 months to a year. So you have a rolling cash flow forecast for 12 months, and so you always know about what's going on for the next 12 months with your cash flow situation. And it's interesting how once you do that and people get used to it, they say, "Wow, this is really great. This is neat. I feel better. I can sleep at night now."
Well, they now have better control over what they're doing, and they know. And I'm assuming part of that is okay. We have a cash projection. You have your projections, and then you have your goals and objectives. Probably in there, right? So here's our projection. Well, now here's how we're going to make that actually happen.
Yep.
Right.
So So it's pretty interesting from that point of view. And I think, again, to get back to the people, you have to look at the right people, and because it's not just a finance group. You have the owner needs to have other people support. If he's dealing with the customers, he needs help with his sales support. You'd be surprised how much they really don't know about their customers. And the other thing is you have all the various risks of a small business, like concentration risk. They have 100 customers, but the 80% of their business was the top 5. So
That's a big problem.
If they lose one or two of those customers, they're in trouble. Or it could be supply chain. If right now supply chain has been an issue for a number of years for a lot of reasons, and most recently because of the duties or tariffs. But if you're only your source of products, you only have one supplier, it's going to be a problem if that supplier can't provide to you. So you always have to be looking at all the risks. That's what a good CFO does is look at that. You forget about the numbers. What are the risks that this business is facing, and how can I deal with those risks, and so forth. So for example, I had one situation, a company where the major raw material was iodine. They made what they were doing. They were selling things to paint and coating companies, and the paint and coating companies would inject their secret formula, and would deal with all the microbial and all the fungus and everything that was attacking the paint. And so, but the major raw material to make that product was iodine. I said, well, where does iodine come from? And they said, well, it's in the dried up riverbeds in Chile. And the companies in Chile, had the market cornered, and it was like $25 or $30 a milligram or something. It was getting very expensive.
Wow.
I said, it's got to be iodine somewhere else in the world. So fortunately, one of the guys in the manufacturing group was from Ukraine, and he said, there's iodine in the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, near on Russia. And so he said, and the Russians drill for oil. And the oil, when they drill for oil, the water comes up too, and in that water is high iodine content. And I said, well, how can we take that to our advantage?
It sounds like waste to them.
So I said, well, can we negotiate? This was back in the late '90s when the Russians were looking for hard currency. So we went. I said, well, I didn't go there, but he went there and he talked to them, and he said, we'd like to put up a little facility next to you and separate the water out from the oil and the iodine, and and you could sell that at a very good price. So the Russians loved that. So we did that. The company in Chile didn't like it at all because they thought we were going to mess it up. So we actually worked out a deal with the Chilean company as well.
Got a better deal. That's good. That's good too, right?
So so my client did very well, and due to my help in terms of fixing that particular issue. That's that. And again, I'm just an accountant, debits and credits, but you have to think outside the box all the time, trying to figure out, well, how can we do things differently? And that's part of my excitement, and for every I can cite a lot of different things like that, but that's probably my most favorite story. Some of the other stories are when I worked at Pepsi, in the mid '80s, I think it was, we had a recession, and it was like there was $300 million of assets in Pepsi International, a company bottling over Pepsi owned that didn't exist. So we did our analysis, and we found out they were all intercompany loans, which was a bad answer.
That is a bad.
So I said, we can't accept that answer. So I said, what we did, I went to the treasurer of Pepsi, and I said, can I restructure these loans to make it third-party bank debt guaranteed by the parent company? He said, that's okay. Why do you want to do that? It's just because 1 year later, I'm going to liquidate this company. So by liquidating, you're going to have to perform on a loan guarantee. So you'll transfer the loss from the foreign jurisdiction to the U.S. tax, and we'll get a tax benefit in the U.S. He said, okay, that's a good idea. So I was able to.
So you got a $300 million tax deduction?
And it wasn't just me. I had to work with the top tax partner, Arthur Young, and so forth and so on. So I was the one that kept spearheading it, but I needed the outside resources to get it done. But we actually wound up getting benefit for close to $1 billion of, and this was back in the 80s. So it wasn't.
That's real money back then.
It was a lot of money back then.
Sure.
So, and that's why I always liked tax. It was always so interesting.
When you can save money, right? Absolutely.
Right.
We take a quick break. You're listening to Master Your Finances.
So I'm just throwing out a little.
That's great. No, I love the stories. We're going all around the world. We're in Chile. We're in Ukraine.
Right.
All right. Last and final segment. Whatever you want to make sure we get in, we're going to get it in now. You ready?
Yeah, I think so. Let's see.
Are you ready? Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. All right, David, a lot of interesting stories there. And saving money is a great thing for companies. I do know that for sure, especially in taxes.
Right. Yeah, I got a lot of stories but I wanted to focus on another thing that smaller companies, they're usually on a cash basis. And cash basis is fine for tax returns, but if you really want to understand your business, you really need to be on an accrual basis. And what do I mean by that? It means that even though it means you made a sale or you sold something, and you should record that sale on your books, even though you haven't collected yet. So you have an accounts receivable. And if you have a payment to somebody, you should record that as an accounts payable. So you want to record all of your stuff so you get as much as you can onto your accrual basis, because it is going to tell you a much better, because from a timing point of view, it's going to tell you a much better idea of how your P&L, profit and loss, is moving. Because if you don't, you're going to have some months that are going to be lumpy because you're going to get a lot of collections or cash receipts in 1 month. It looks like it's a great month, but it's not really a great month because 50% of the collections were from a prior month. So it's always good to look at your business even if you're a small company and you want to continue to do on a tax return basis on a cash, you want to look at your financial statements on an accrual basis. So you capture the correct P&L. It also forces you to focus on your balance sheet. Because you'll see your receivables, your payables, loans, and so forth and so on. And then the other thing you have to focus on is the cash flow. So that's another element that people don't really focus on. You do a cash flow analysis. You start off with your income, but you have cash flow items don't affect income. You may be borrowing money. That cash is coming into your account. That's part of cash flow. You may be spending some of that, for some reason. So and you may have purchase of equipment. You may be other debt payments. There are a lot of different factors in cash flow. So you should be doing your P&L on an accrual basis. You should be looking at your balance sheet on an accrual basis, and you should be doing that cash flow analysis so you can see all the ins and outs of what's happening with the business. And I like to do it on a monthly basis. Some folks say let's do it quarterly, but I don't like to do quarterly or annually because you're lumping everything together. It's always great to try to segment it on a monthly basis. And that's also important too. If you get to the point where you're going to sell your company, most companies will want you to have it on a monthly basis. So they want to see the activity, on a regular basis, not just a quarterly or yearly or whatever. And they don't want to just see tax returns. They want to see your actual financial statements. It doesn't mean you have to have an audit and spend a lot of money. A lot of accounting firms will do a review for you, and which is less expensive, but it gives the confidence that somebody besides you have done the work and put together the financial statements. The forecasting is a whole different story. How do you do forecasting? I mean, does that mean you just put up, okay, I'm going to make $20 million next year, and I just say that sounds like a good number. Put that. No, you have to say, okay, here are my clients I have now, okay, and this is what I expect to get from those clients. And some companies don't have a lot of recurring revenue, so that's usually a challenging starting point. So you have to put down and say, well, this is how we're going to generate revenue for the next year and next 2 years, next 3 years. And what are the drivers that are going to create that revenue? And what people do I need? What resources do I need to spend? This is all the planning process. It's like the Yogi Berra joke. When you get to the fork in the road, you take it. This is how you're going to know which fork to take.
Right.
So you're looking at and again, this is where the forecasting comes in. You can put together a budget. The only thing I know about a budget, the actual results are going to be higher or lower. It's never going to be exactly the budget. So it's always going to be plus or minus. So the reason you put together the budget is to have a starting point, but then you should monitor that during the course of the year. You should be looking at your actuals versus your budget every month. And a lot of companies don't do that. They don't even have a budget usually. So
right.
You should be looking, and if you can figure out, why it didn't work. It didn't work. I had a budget of this, but it didn't happen. What happened? So you can go back and you can see, and it helps you going forward. It also helps you with your forecasting better from that point of view. So forecasting is I would recommend on a monthly basis.
Well, that's going to give you much better control because I know what is it? You really have to break this into pieces, right? So a lot of times companies, if you think too far out, you go, I have all year to get that done.
Yeah.
But if you start doing things like on a 30-day basis, a much shorter basis,
Right.
it gets you much more focused on here's what I need to do today, this week, this month,
Right.
and then boom, then you measure it.
Yeah, I think it's all about people.
So it makes it more accountable on a time basis. That way you don't get, you don't kind of slack out into the future, and then it kind of pushes way out there if you're not careful, right?
Yeah, it's all about process, and if you have a good process in place, it's going to get you to the right place in terms of your business, and that's what a lot of companies are looking for, the process. I'm trying to think of some other.
Yeah, so the processes are huge. I mean, one thing you touched on a little bit, I'm curious about how often you run into this. I know sometimes, especially when you go into these older established companies, the personnel mix might not be optimal, but they've been there forever. Oh, that's my buddy Joe. He's been here for 20 years, but maybe that's not really the best spot for Joe.
Well,
right? How do you kind of address these things that might be
the family
lingering a little bit?
The family offices are usually, not family offices, the businesses that are family run,
Right.
maybe the second or third run, they're usually more difficult. We get into situations where you have a company that's doing very well. It's being run by two brothers. The one brother wants to grow the company and do all kinds of. The other brother just wants to collect a paycheck.
Go play golf. I know that happens all the time.
So so you have to figure that out. You just can't go and say you got to get rid of your brother. So you have to kind of work around that and help him.
Sounds like a buyout opportunity to me.
Right. That's usually what happens. He somehow figures
The
out.
working brother gets a little tired of sending the non-working brother his money.
He figures out a way to do that. So that's it's an interesting dynamic. But we work with a lot of different companies like that have that issue. But getting back to the different companies we deal with, we deal with manufacturing companies, and they have special needs, special issues we have to deal with. I do, and I also help them do shortcuts where they say, "What do you mean by shortcut?" Well, what's your total revenue? What are your variable costs? By taking that total revenue and subtracting the variable cost, I get what I call a contribution margin. That contribution margin has got to be enough to cover all my other expenses. And so if my contribution margin is zero or negative, that means I can't pay for all my expenses. So it's an interesting little tool that the manufacturing people can have without too much effort. What's my total revenue? What are my variable costs to generate that revenue? So that's my margin. And do I have enough margin to cover all the money I want to spend this year?
Right.
So it's like a back of the envelope type of approach that I've seen a lot of companies use, and it's not gap accounting, it's not anything, but it's a good way to as a test check what your business is going. And the manufacturing companies have a lot of different issues because they're different than the service companies because they have to deal with they're making a product, so they have raw materials, they have work in process, and then they have finished goods and sales. So there's a lot of different cycles that you have to deal with, and then they may have some inventory that goes bad or has to be obsolete. So there's a whole process that's there that they have to take advantage of to make sure everything's fine. So, and manufacturing companies have had issues because of the duties that are right now. So they've been struggling, because it's not just it's all manufacturing.
Well, let's speak about that for a minute because that's kind of a big deal, like the tariffs, the duties, whatever we want to call those. So how are some of these companies adjusting to these? Because, I mean, you wake up in the morning and you have a number, and then you wake up and then in the afternoon you go, wait a minute, what's the real number? So how are they dealing with the reality, the protection, the negotiation, whatever's going on out there in this variable kind of world that they're living in where it's not nailed down right now?
There are a lot of different things that they can work on. First, if they're our clients, we've already told them they should last year that it's coming. We know it's coming, so let's buy 6 months worth of inventory.
Okay.
So that you can do pre-planning.
Right.
So we've done that. Also, if you didn't do that, we can try to help you from other points of view. So we try to figure out maybe there's other companies that have excess inventory that we can buy from. So we try to work the crowd and see what we can do to help. There's no magic bullet, but it depends on the material. A lot of the material is fungible, and you'd be surprised the companies that they're a U.S. company, they're manufacturing. They say, why would they have a problem? Yeah, because a lot of the materials they need to make their products come from outside the U.S.
Right.
People don't realize that. Well, I'm a manufacturing company in Philadelphia. I don't have any problem. Yes, you do, because 80% of your stuff comes from outside the U.S. So you need to deal with it. So it's that's the and if you get into the service companies, I think I mentioned it before. The biggest issue with the service companies is getting the invoices out, which requires you to collect your time reports and get those time reports into invoices and out the door as quickly as possible.
I'm really surprised at that, because I mean, there's a lot of automation out there for this stuff now, right? I mean, as far as booking your costs, booking your revenue.
There is, but
I'm surprised you're saying that. Actually,
there's still companies out there that are not not there, and
okay.
And we learn something every week in terms of new systems.
Right.
We were just talking about the other day. We just have another client that's coming in, and it's a small client. They're doing all these things. Well, they don't do all that stuff. We can do all that on a program.
Oh, they're doing it manually or whatever.
Right,
and
everything's being done manually. And the bookkeeper is saying it's going to take me. If I have to do that, it's going to take me after a couple of days. We're going to have to hire more people. I said, no, I don't think so.
Right, just plug it into this system and it'll work, right? Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah. So,
and I think a lot of it is the awareness. When you bring in an outside person or company, they have a totally different perspective, and you have expertise. You've seen this done 100 times. They've done it once. Right, and they're like, oh, and you can apply those two pieces together and just shortcut the time and the expense, right?
Right. Yeah. We all. That's why I say it's so much fun going in and talking to people.
Right.
We start off with their pain points, and then once we help them with the pain point, we say, well, there's 3 or 4 or 5, 6 other things we can help you with. So that's why we try to. And I was at one client. I just went in to do a review. The owner asked me to do a review to make sure it was okay. I said it's not okay, and he said, well, so I wound up being there like in 4 or 5 years because I just kept reinventing myself. I just kept finding new things to do and that they needed. So. And I was creating value. It wasn't all at cost. So,
right. Well, hopefully that happens.
Yeah.
You create value.
We create a lot of value in various ways and so forth.
Well, this went by really quick. Any final words before we sign off today?
Well, if anybody needs help, you know where to get me.
All right. Thanks, David. You've been listening to Master Your Finances. Have a wonderful day.